Thank you, Allison. It is 8 a.m., everyone. We're going to give it a couple more minutes before we get it kicked off. But welcome to the call. As people are hopping on, if this is your first call ever, we'd love for you to either unmute and say hello or say hi in the chat.
Hello.
Hi, Kim. We're so excited to hear from you. Do you want to maybe tell folks about your new role while we're waiting?
Yeah. So I am the Director of Shelter Outreach and Policy Development at the Bissell Pet Foundation. Having lots of fun over there.
Well, we are super glad that you're here, and we're super glad to hear that just as we would expect, you hit the ground running. You're doing all these amazing national programs. So we're super excited.
Your speaker.
Hi, Denise. Can you hear us?
She's frozen.
Well, she had a birthday over the weekend.
To the right. You see where it's muted right there? Next to English. There you go. Oh.
Denise, if your speaker isn't working, maybe you want to hop out and hop back in since you are one of our.
There she is.
We got you?
We're here. Can you hear us?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Now we can.
Perfect.
Oh, let me get Lauren in there a little more.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Lauren. Well, y'all.
Happy birthday, Denise.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good. Well,
can I brag for a second? I have
yes.
to tell you what they surprised me this morning. I came back after a nice break from work for the first time in 10 years and came back, and they know I'm a big Below Deck fan. And so they had a cameo video from Captain Sandy singing me happy birthday. So,
whoa.
So
well,
yay.
I love that it was your birthday this weekend, but you're actually giving us the gift of an awesome presentation later on today. So we are super excited that you're here. Hang tight. You can mute up for now. We're going to be having you and your team close out the call. So super excited that you're here. Good morning, everyone. It is 8:02 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Bobby Mann. I'm the Maddie's Human Animal Support Services Pilot Director. Super honored to be co-hosting this call with all of the Maddie's family. Couple quick announcements before I toss it over to Mary Smith. On July 26th, we are going to have a very, very special Monday call. The Cal Animals Emerging Leaders Program, in collaboration with Maddie's Fund, is going to be doing a 4-hour Emerging Leaders Symposium for professional development for all of you and all of your staff that you'd love to invite. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more next week, but just wanted to remind everyone that's going to be at a different time, not at our 8 a.m. standard time. That's going to start at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and should be a lot of fun. So I know Mary's already been bringing the positive vibes, but I have her keep it moving forward. So Mary, I'm going to toss it over to you for our Mary's Motivation Monday.
Thanks, Bobby. Good morning, everybody. I don't know how motivating this is going to be, but I do want to tell you that last Monday, I told you about a special announcement that was going to happen on Saturday. So here is what the announcement was. On Saturday morning, Maddie's Fund awarded the 2021 Avanzino Leadership Award to Dr. Lila Miller. And I don't know how many of you know Dr. Miller, but if you don't, you need to change that immediately. Because most of the things that we do today in shelters and rescue organizations that provide care and support and love and life-saving to the animals in our care actually came about from some of the groundbreaking work that Dr. Miller did when she was part of the ASPCA, as well as the work that she's done as part of the Association of Shelter Vets, all of the textbooks she has written. She has spent over 40 years in animal welfare, figuring out new and different ways to make the work that we do as good as it possibly is. And this woman is a true badass, a total groundbreaker. I mean, she was one of 2 African-American women to graduate from Cornell's Veterinary Medical School in 1977. And believe me, that was a challenge, not in terms of the academics, but in terms of being a Black American woman. And the stories that she tells are just amazing testaments to perseverance and just being committed to wanting to work with animals. And when she took her first job working in the clinic at the ASPCA in 1977, she didn't think that she would last more than 6 months. And 42 years later, when she retired, she has a body of so many impressive achievements. It would take the next hour to share all of them with you. But I urge you to look her up. She is amazing. She, July 10th, has now been proclaimed as Dr. Lila Miller Shelter Medicine Day. So any of you that are managing the calendars for your organizations, make sure you put that in, because every July 10th hereafter, we are going to celebrate Dr. Lila Miller. Also, if you happen to be in New York City today during rush hour, and you happen to meander over to Times Square on the big Jumbotron, you might notice a huge picture of Dr. Miller and the proclamation for July 10th being Dr. Lila Miller Shelter Medicine Day. This woman is just so incredible. EB, I want to thank you, because all of this happened as part of the ASPCA Cornell Maddie Shelter Medicine Conference that went on this weekend. They so graciously gave us an opportunity on Saturday morning to really just show Dr. Miller the love, and we did. And we even managed to surprise her, which I think is kind of sort of an achievement in and of itself. So please, I would urge you, if you don't know who she is, Google her. You will find a huge body of information about Dr. Miller. If you ever get the chance to meet her in person, she is, it's a life-changing experience. So Bobby, with that, I'm out, but what a great opportunity this weekend held for us. Thank you, EB. Thank you, ASPCA. Thank you, Cornell.
Thank you, Mary. Now I can see why you're all sunshine and rainbows. You love honoring people that are doing the work, and you got to do it in the biggest way possible. So thanks to Maddie's, thanks to everyone else. Today is really going to be about collaboration. So I'm very excited about today. We're going to be hearing about collaboration on a national level and collaboration on regional levels as well. But before we kick it off to our speakers, we want to create a little bit of space for national updates. So if anybody else has an update, go ahead and speak up. I'm going to mute now.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ward, the Director of Education for Maddie's Fund. And just a quick update, our online apprenticeships applications have opened up today. So if you're interested in applying, they are open this week, and it's a chance for you to learn in a small group environment from some of our experts for about a 4-week period. So check out the Maddie's University online apprenticeships. And Allison, thanks for putting the link in the chat.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hi all, it's Kathy from Canada. Just a reminder to save the date, July 28th, registrations will open for Humane Canada's National Violence Link Conference, which is being held virtually and will happen in November on, I believe it's the 4th and the 5th this year. So once it's open, I'll drop links in the chat.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bobby, do you want to let everybody know about where we're going to continue the conversation when this call's done?
Of course, Sharon. So the goal is always, always, always to continue the conversation over at Maddie's Pet Forum. As we are spending time on these calls, there's nothing better than to continue to collaborate with all of your peers. And I personally don't think there's a better place in the whole entire world than Maddie's Pet Forum. So we will drop a link in the chat shortly, and I hope to see you all there. All right, let's talk about collaboration. Kim, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. I know that you got to give a quick shout out of your new position to kick it off. So I'm gonna just kick it right over to you to talk about the amazing work that you're doing and the amazing partnerships that you've established.
Thanks, Bobby. This is just a happy call on a Monday morning. I can't tell you guys how happy I am to be here on your happy call. And I'm glad we're talking about collaboration. So we've made some changes over at the Bissell Pet Foundation, and we have launched a program called the Bissell Pet Foundation National Shelter Alliance. This is very much what you guys are all used to. It's just collaborating among shelters. What we're doing is working toward creating a backbone of strong shelters across the country that will help to empower other shelters. Our goal is to reach the rural shelters that really feel like they're being left behind and enable them to have additional resources and additional support. Also, we are partnering with Code 3 and Associates to help shelters to formulate disaster plans and to respond to disaster when needed. And you're probably wondering why Bissell Pet Foundation is getting into the disaster world. Well, Kathy Bissell's mission has always been spay, neuter, adoption, and microchipping to get pets home. And we know that during disaster is the most vulnerable time for animals, both owned and not owned. So it just made sense for us at this point to dip our toe into the disaster world and partner with Code 3 to ensure that shelters are ready for disaster. And more importantly, to form this big network of collaboration to kind of fill gaps maybe where HAAS isn't right now, or other programs aren't, in preparing shelters for disaster, making sure that they have plans. So it's really a program that's just simply put together to empower shelters. It's not in a box. There's nothing, there's no specific mission to it other than empowering shelters. We've recently been working in El Paso to support the University of Florida after they went in for an assessment to move some pets, and now we'll be helping them to do some vaccine clinics. And where the Shelter Alliance will come in is we'll be talking to shelter leaders across the country that may have expertise in areas where organizations like El Paso need them the most. What's fun about this is that we will work with anybody and everybody. So we'll be talking to HAAS, we'll be talking to the ASPCA, we'll be talking to HSUS, really anybody that can provide resources for shelters. This is about crisis management and stabilization and just basically being flexible and being there for when shelters need us the most. And I think that you guys know that there is no organization in this country that has the broad reach to be at one end of the country and at the same time at the other end, except for animal shelters, right? So, and nobody has the level of expertise that all of the animal shelters in the country combined do. So it's really just a matter of pulling everybody together to reach those animals and shelter staff in need. And I have a lovely flyer I'm gonna put in the chat that provides some more information on the program for anybody that would like it. And if anybody is interested in talking more about it, I'm certainly available. I'll put my contact in there as well.
Thank you so much, Kim. We have some time for questions if anybody has any questions, but I'm just really excited about this because it just speaks to the honor of collaboration. Where nobody's reinventing the wheel, we're figuring out where the holes are, and we're allowing leaders to lead. So Kim, we're so excited about your new role, and we hope that you can hang out with us more often on these calls.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bobby.
Any questions from the group? All right. From national to regional, we have a powerhouse group of speakers today that are going to be talking about amazing work that's going on in the Jacksonville animal welfare community. But I actually want to toss it over to my friend Caroline Laxton, the Eastern U.S. Regional Manager for Found Animals, to introduce our amazing group because she's the one that got this all set up for us.
Thanks, Bobby. I am thrilled to introduce you to the powerhouse Jacksonville animal welfare community. We have the big three on the call today. We have Jacksonville Humane Society, Jacksonville Animal Care and Protective Services, and First Coast No More Homeless Pets. So I'll start off with Denise Deisler. She is the CEO of Jacksonville Humane Society. And we also have Lauren Jackowitz, and I'm sorry if I have butchered your last name, Lauren, so you can correct me later. She is the Director of Operations at Jacksonville Humane. We also have Jennifer Walter, and she is the Division Chief at Jacksonville Animal Care and Protective Services. And also Jennifer Barker, who is the Chief Operating Officer at First Coast No More Homeless Pets. And this Jacksonville community has just been leading the way in regards to collaboration. for many years now. And they've also have a unique situation when it comes to return to home, as they are Jacksonville Humane and Animal Care and Protective Services intake strays. So I'll let them take it from here.
If I can start, can you hear me? I want to congratulate Jennifer Barker because she is now the Chief Executive Officer for First Coast No More Homeless Pets. They recently announced that last week or 2 weeks ago, and we are thrilled.
My apologies.
To have her in that role. It's new, Carolyn. So she, like I said, it's a fairly new thing. So we're excited, and goodness knows she's worked really hard and is the right person for that role. So we're excited for that.
Thank you, Denise, and everyone too. And only 12 days into the new role, but been with the organization for many, many years. So really happy to be on the call today.
Hello all. So I'm Jennifer Walter. I'm here from Jacksonville Animal Care and Protective Services. I have been with ACPS for about 7 years now, and recently stepped into the role as division chief less than a year ago. So I am kind of new to the leadership role as well. Prior to that, I was the shelter manager at ACPS.
If open forum, like I said, I don't mind starting. You know, I'm never bashful about things like that. And so I think one of the first things to note and is really solid about the partnership is what both Jen and Jennifer just said. We've changed leaders a time or two, but our organizations are committed to this and always have been. And Jennifer and Jen have been part of their organizations for a long time. And so the transition into the leadership role was a smooth one. And our commitment remains as strong today as it did when we first started partnering together, I want to say about 9 years ago, with sincerity. And I think that's important. For the sake of guests, I'll say that it wasn't without some fear and trepidation that we all came to the table initially. And one of the big fears that was out on the table, our board was afraid of it, the different orgs were afraid of it, was that if we all partnered and collaborated too closely, would we lose our individual identities? Would our community become confused about, you know, who's on first and who's doing what? And that was one of the things we dispelled, one of the fears we dispelled right out of the gate. And I remember very clearly saying to my board, so what? If everybody's a good guy, does it matter if they confuse one of us with the other? Really, at the end of the day, that's not our aim, is to one outshine the other in any kind of way, but it's for our community to perceive all of us working in animal welfare as a positive, welcoming group who wants to work together with our community to save lives and to have a healthier community for our animals. And so, like I said, that was one of the biggest fears, and it's in line with the abundance theory. And in fact, when we first began collaborating, again, board's fear of fundraising efforts and the confusion, when in fact, exactly the opposite happened. We all gained more volunteers, we all gained more supporters, we all gained more participants in the variety of programs. So I want to be clear, there's nothing negative about the collaboration. In fact, it brings nothing but positive things to the community and positive things for animals.
Denise, I have a question for you. And this really is a model collaboration where you're really using all the assets that you have to support your community the best way that you can. How did you decide which organization would sort of be responsible for certain programs or be the leader of certain programs? Or did you all just sort of decide to run all similar programs and just refer people to different places?
I think it's a great question. So initially, I think the roles were fairly clear and they were a little siloed, and we didn't think that was necessary. So First Coast No More Homeless Pets, absolutely hands down, was doing high quality, high volume spay neuter, tons of community cat work, and it was wonderful work. Animal Care and Protective Services obviously had a code enforcement function and some mandatory things that the rest of us did not have. And then JHS, we were, I think, in a position to be more flexible and bend and help the other two organizations by virtue of being a private org, as well as a little more flexible in our programming. So we weren't hardcore about needing to be one thing or another. We respected and valued each other's roles. So we started with looking at what were the common problems. And I think one of the best examples, which turned out to be a bad example, as often new ideas do, right, was we identified right out of the gate that kittens were the most at risk. And I remember really sitting down with the two folks who were in leadership roles at the time, and we were talking about behavior dogs. And I said, why are we talking about behavior dogs? Not that that isn't an important topic, but the animals most at risk of losing their life in our shelters at the time were underage kittens. And none of us singly had the ability to address that, but together we could address it in a huge way. And at the time we'd heard about, gosh, it might have even been you guys, Bobby, somebody with a kitten nursery out west, and said, you know what? Oh, we can do that. And we said, well, what does each of us have to bring to the table? And First Coast said, I've got some additional equipment in terms of a microscope and some other things like that. And I've got some funding. First Coast had some funding for some part-time staff. JHS had a dynamite medical team that was willing to take on the medical aspect of it. And as we affectionately joke, Animal Care had kittens to contribute to the cause. And so all three agencies threw down everything we had, and we did joint marketing on it. And the coolest thing about it was, and JHS had a separate facility. It was a little old house somebody had donated to us. So we converted it to the kitten nursery, and all three agencies put the same pleas out for volunteers. All three agencies shared the same posts on our Facebook page. All three agencies, we were all singing the same song to our community. So there was no confusion whatsoever. We were all saying exactly the same thing, delivering the same messages, and challenging the community to join us to save kittens. And we had that first year, the best life-saving year for underage kittens this community had ever seen. And we later learned that, kitten nursery might not be the best way to address underage kittens. And so we've since adjusted and changed how we approach kittens. But now kittens in Jacksonville are well above a 90% save rate across the board with our organizations. But it took all three of us saying, this is the problem. What can we each bring to the table to solve it? And I just can't emphasize enough, the message sharing is so important. We did the same thing recently with Caroline and microchips and identification. All three organizations participated, all three organizations promoted using the same things. And so our community is united because we're united.
That is amazing. For the group, as we said, as Denise said, this is open forum, so we'd love questions from the rest of the group. I actually have a question for everyone in the group. So how many of the folks on this call have had community partnerships, collaborations prior to COVID? So you can say pre-COVID. How many of you have established them during COVID? So you can just say during COVID, or if you don't have one, you can use the chat for that as well. But Denise, I'd love to have you toss it over to anyone else in your group for maybe an additional question as we're answering that one.
Yeah, so something just really quick that I wanted to add in addition to what Denise had mentioned is that over the years, each organization's role has changed as well. So where we started when I was here 7 years ago is not currently the same things that we are doing now. So I think having that level of flexibility and being open and having the lines of communication open where we can say to each other, all right, we're struggling with this right now. Are you guys able to assist? And just kind of pivot whenever it's needed. So our main focus with the Jacksonville Humane Society years ago was direct transfers. And over the last few years, that's pivoted to them taking in more strays. So we were spending a lot of time and resources driving dogs and cats across town to get them to the Humane Society. And now they're just doing the direct intake of them. With First Coast No More Homeless Pets, our needs and our collaboration with them have changed as well. We do have public-private contracts with both of the agencies. And with First Coast No More Homeless Pets, they're handling all of our community cat surgeries. That instead of cats being taken in directly at the city shelter, We have coached our residents to take them directly to First Coast No More Homeless Pets. So we've been able to decrease our cat intake. We were essentially just acting as a handling center, that we were doing an impound of them. We were entering all the information in our system. And then twice a day, First Coast No More Homeless Pets was coming to ACPS and picking up cats. So the idea came, if we could just have the residents, instead of driving to the city shelter, we're only about 10 minutes away from one another. Why don't they just take the cats directly to First Coast No More Homeless Pets? And then we could pull that transport aspect out of it. The other way that we've partnered with First Coast No More Homeless Pets, even though kind of their main function is high volume, high quality, low cost spay, neuter, and medical care. Whenever we were completely drowning in kittens and had kittens growing up in our adoption center, First Coast No More Homeless Pets stepped in and actually transferred kittens from our city shelter and had a small adoption center at their facility as well. So every time we've had and recognized a problem, all three agencies have stepped in to figure out how we can solve those. And we're willing to make the changes that we needed to in order to ensure that we had the highest life-saving that we could in the city. So flexibility and the ability to change and adapt with what the needs of the community are, I think is incredibly important to the collaboration in Jacksonville.
Jennifer, did your staff, the line staff, were they a bit reluctant to redirect people in fear that they would have a lot of conflict with the general public? And how did that end up working out?
Oh, it was all rainbows and butterflies. No. As we all know, change is incredibly difficult. So whenever we present changes to our staff, there is always kind of that resistance and the what ifs. And what we found over the years is we can talk ourselves in circles and say, what if, and try to figure out what people are going to have problems with or complain about. And what we find is most of the time, we've completely, I hate to say it this way, but we've overreacted to the situation, that we don't get nearly the number of complaints that we expected, that people were just happy that, for example, with First Coast No More Homeless Pets, they just want to get their community cat spayed and neutered and not have to pay for it. So to them, it doesn't matter if they drop it off at our doors or drop it off at First Coast stores, they're getting the same service. So it was just about coaching our staff. And I'm a big fan of, well, let's just try it and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, we can always go back. But if we never try, nothing's going to change. But yes, we did get some pushback from the staff. And it's truly, in my opinion, the coaching aspect and saying, let's just try it and see how it goes. And we'll figure out those speed bumps as the time goes on.
I love that. I know it's like the two words we've used during COVID, pilot and pivot, right? If it doesn't feel so permanent, it's not as scary. And remember, folks, we have at least another 10 or 12 minutes. So if you have questions, please go ahead and use the chat. We'd love to call on you. I have a question about finances, right? So as you all got a little bit more physically responsible or strategic about how you were spending your funds between your agencies, how did that work with your budgets? Were you actually saving money, being more strategic? Did it cost you more money in certain programs? What did that look like for all of you?
I think it's a good question. I don't know that any of us would ever claim we saved any money anywhere. We all know money is a scramble all the time, but I think we were able to redirect monies by understanding what we were each capable of and what we weren't capable of. And I think one good example of that was when animal care started doing more social work in the field and doing more help and wanted to do even more than they were already doing. They were limited because they were already in their budget year, and they're, once you're there, and there's not much changing that. So we, having the flexibility that they didn't, were able to apply for grant dollars to get them the supplies they needed to be able to do that in a bigger way. So we went to Jennifer and we met with the ACOs and we asked them to provide us a list of the things that they would like to have for their outreach work in the community. They gave us the list, we wrote the grant, we purchased the items they needed, and they went to animal care to help them carry out their work. We also have like a state spay neuter grant, and you can only apply for it every other year. And so we coordinate amongst the three agencies in terms of whose year is it to apply, because it benefits the community. And it doesn't matter to me if Jennifer Barker is doing that surgery at First Coast, or if that surgery is happening here, or in the case of Jen, she usually contracts that out. It's surgery that's getting done. So we collaborate on even who's applying for the grant, and we even write letters of recommendation for each other for that particular state grant that's done. So that, and I think speaking with a unified voice is just so important. When we were, you asked about COVID in particular, you know, knowing what each other were doing and what our limitations were, you know, we coordinated our messaging at the onset so that we could communicate with our community about what was going on. Our city shelter was dealing with a completely different non-COVID related item that had them closed at the time. So the community was feeling kind of the double, triple whammy at the onset. But by being able to communicate and let people know where they could go to get what services and how long they could expect that, I said we're all singing off the same song sheet. One other quick example, and that is we were getting a lot of pushback during this kitten season from the rescue community, and seeing a lot of traffic telling them how to beat our systems and go around things. And so the three of us knocked heads again and said, what, you know, what do we do about this that's positive and constructive? And so together we came up with a joint statement and authored a joint guide to everything cats and kittens in our county. So with a list of every single agency, every opportunity, and we jointly released that information so that, again, we were all delivering the same message and the same information, and it not being turfy at all.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask someone to build a little bit of Monday courage. I see so many wheels spinning, but no questions being asked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute. I'm going to turn off my camera. I'm going to act like I'm not here until someone unmutes. I know there's a question out there.
I have a question. It's incredibly frustrating working across the country and talking to a shelter that is absolutely struggling, and there is like a humane society, you know, 3 miles away, and they're not communicating at all. Denise, how do we take your incredible energy and your plan and bottle it and get it to these people? Because it would be so unbelievably life-saving. I mean, in Arkansas, in Mississippi, there's organizations that are just, they're right there and they're not even talking. How do we make it happen?
I'm glad you asked the question, because I think some of the people on the call are, at least in my mind, part of the answer. And, you know, we've also got a statewide effort in the state of Florida, and Jennifer sits on that steering committee with us and is a member also, as is First Coast. And it's one of my greatest frustrations is we have this well-resourced organization sitting here in a beautiful facility with money in the bank and, you know, staff to beat the band, yet right next door, there's somebody struggling. And instead of helping them, they're going elsewhere and doing something else. And that's incredibly frustrating to me. We're working on a campaign to address exactly that here in Florida. How do we get these less resourced communities connected to those who are resourced? But I'll tell you, the challenge is, what's the motivation for them to do that? And at the end of the day, when you're talking to a private agency, the primary motivator is usually money. And the secondary, the demotivator, is fear. Again, this fear that somehow they'll lose their identity, they'll lose their relevance. What is that? And so I'll be dialing your numbers, talking to you about the monetary aspect of that, because I think funders need to be asking. When private organizations are asking for grant dollars, they need to be asking the question, what are you doing to help your local municipal agency? How will what you're asking for benefit your local municipal agency? And if not your local one, because they're fine, hallelujah, then what are you doing to help surrounding counties? We're probably not unlike most of the states in the nation in that, like I said, we've got large metropolis, you know, high education, high dollars, high tax base communities surrounded by rural counties with zero tax base and zero support. And so to me, it's not just anymore about helping within your own community, but what are you doing to help your neighboring communities? And we've developed a regional approach in the state of Florida and are bringing some one of the beautiful things about the success of Jacksonville's partnership is it now gives us the bandwidth to help outside of Jacksonville. We can now help beyond the borders of our county because we've done such amazing work together here. And home will always be our number one priority. I will always ask, hey, I'll pick up the phone and call Jen before we'd ever accept a transfer from any place else. I need to know she's okay and everything's okay here. And if they're doing good and they don't need us, then that neighboring county is going to get what space and time and money we've got to give. So listen, I think it's the number one challenge and frustration. I think the resources exist both in the private agencies on a local level and the national agencies to solve this problem. The resources are there. They're just not distributed in a way that benefit everybody equally.
Denise, do you have a formal coalition there, or is it just kind of just partnerships? And do you have MOUs? Did you mention that already?
It's a great question. We shunned the formal part of it very early on because there were others coming in wanting to write and rewrite how we did that. And as soon as you put it in writing, then some curveball comes in. We wanted to have that ability to adapt and adjust to whatever we needed to adapt and adjust to. And we're so sincere about this partnership that we didn't need that. We never felt we needed that. Now, with the government, as Jen mentioned early on, there are some contractual agreements, but that's because they're distributing monies for some services to get done, and that's necessary. But the coalition itself does not have a written agreement. There were some very early on when we formed that advocated heavily for that, and we bucked it. And to this day, we've never needed a piece of paper to be helpful to each other.
I do want to.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I do want to brag on the Jacksonville folks because they're being very modest too in regards to everything they've been doing in the last year, especially for RTH, for Return to Home. Now I know we're all focusing on that piece of our work now, which is wonderful. However, they've really done it on a collaborative level. Even to go as far as analyzing their data as a community instead of just individual shelters when it comes to Return to Home, and figuring out, hey, where using the data to see where we need to focus efforts on. And I would like for them to just individually, real quick, if you guys could speak to what you've been doing individually and collaboratively when it comes to Return to Home.
I can jump in and go first. As the municipal shelter, we kind of look at it two different ways. So we are responsible for field services in our community. So for the animal protection side and the enforcement side. So we follow the best practices in that our animal control officers do carry microchip scanners on their vans with them. They're scanning dogs and cats in the field and do have the ability and the kudos that they will drive around to the pet owner's home and deliver a pet back to their home instead of bringing them to the shelter. It costs us about $520 for sheltering services for every animal that enters our shelter. So if our animal control officers can take 15 minutes or a half an hour and drive around a neighborhood or walk a dog around the neighborhood or knock on doors and try and get that dog back to its owner, then it's considered a win for us. So we fully encourage and support them slowing down. And rather than just being the impounders in the field, they're researching microchips while they're still in the neighborhood to locate that owner before they even pull out of the street that they're on where the dog was found. We also offer over-the-counter services. So we don't have a community clinic that's open to the public. Luckily, we have First Coast No More Homeless Pets and the Jacksonville Humane Society that provide low-cost medical care to owned pets. So that's not a function that we feel that we need to have at the present time. But we do offer over-the-counter services for public safety type of services. So we offer rabies vaccinations, distemper vaccinations, and microchips to our community members. And right now, we are pretty much offering free microchips to anybody that wants them. The only caveat to our offering free microchips is that they have to agree to have those chips registered, because we all know the chip is only as good as the registration. So we were just at the Riverside Arts Market, which is one of our local big maker markets. And I was there scanning microchips and getting pet microchips registered before 4th of July and Hurricane Elsa that was heading our way. So we're working not just in the field, but also on the community level as well, just to make sure that anybody that wants a microchip has access to it. The 3 organizations together did a full month of free microchips. So we called it Microchips in May, where we had free microchips available at each of the different organizations. So no matter what area of town people were in, they had the ability to have access to a free microchip. And then we're repeating that this coming August for Check Your Chip Day. And we're making it Check Your Chip Weekend instead of Check Your Chip Day. That each of our organizations, so Animal Care and Protective Services, the Jacksonville Humane Society, and First Coast No More Homeless Pets, we're each taking a day that we're going to be offering free microchips. So again, no matter where you are in the community or what your availability is, there's a day that you can come to one of our agencies and get a free microchip for their pet, and then also help with getting that microchip registered as well.
Thanks for talking about the collaboration, Jen. We're excited about the upcoming event next month. But something that our agency did to help support the return to home effort is we actually created a volunteer role as our microchip champion. And so Debbie comes to us twice weekly, and she actually calls everybody that has had a microchip implanted to make sure that their information is accurate and up to date. So we see 60,000 clients a year in our clinics, and we do, thousands of microchips. So it's really important that we figured out a way to be able to work this into our daily operating schedule without too much staff investment. We have somebody that is very excited to support the program. The team members make sure that they promote microchips to every client coming in. And so this just helps us close the loop by making sure that everybody is up to date. So we call them shortly after their microchip visit. Some people do have trouble registering, but then we also do it semi-annually as well, because we know a lot of our clients move pretty regularly. So that's been something that we created this past year, and we're really excited to just analyze the data. But it's already very telling, where we've been able to reach, I think it's about 75% of people that needed to update their information.
Did you want to add anything?
Sure, yeah. At JHS, I think the most important thing to us is that reclaim is completely barrier-free. So people who come to us thinking that their animal is here with us as a stray, we will ask them to pay to cover the medical services that we provided to them, but we'll never make that a barrier. So if that's not possible, they just don't have the money to do it, we will return that animal back to them, because we all know it'll cost a lot more money to keep the animal in our care than it will be to give it back to its owner. So making sure there's as little barriers as possible. Another thing that we're doing, we did do microchips in May with ACPS and First Coast, but now we're planning a chip clinic in August. So with the microchips in May, what we did there was it was free microchips with any other service. And we didn't have as large of a turnout. It was kind of difficult to serve all of those customers because we have such a high demand for, regular medical services. And a lot of those people were people who were adopted from us and already had microchips. So we didn't get the return that we were hoping for, but we had done a microchip clinic before and saw a ton of success with that. So we chose a different approach for August, and we are all doing our own one-day clinic. First Coast No More Homeless Pets picked a day, ACPS picked a day, and we picked a day. We're each going to offer free microchips for a few hours, and we hope to see a great turnout with that. And one of the really awesome things is that Caroline actually came out and spoke to us all, which got us all really riled up about microchips and helped us see the data, which was when animals are microchipped and their microchips are registered, the animals go home so much quicker than if they're just here sitting as strays that are not microchipped. So that's kind of like the fueling force behind all of this. Is it's going to save us money in the long run, so we might as well offer these chips for free now.
One other thing that we began doing, we've been doing it, but we've pushed it a little harder post-COVID, is encouraging finders to do exactly what Jennifer described the officers are doing.
Yeah.
And that is walk the dog around your neighborhood, post a flyer in your neighborhood, take an active role in getting that dog or cat back to its home. And I remember that my kids coming home one day with a puppy and they were very excited and thought this puppy got to be ours. I said, no, 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 somebody's probably missing that puppy. And it'll feel even better if you find him his real home. And these two little boys put that puppy in the wagon and went around our neighborhood and knocked door to door to door until they found the owners, who gave them each $1 and they thought they'd won the lottery. So they forgot all about the puppy when they got their $1 each. But we've been amazed at the community's response to that. And they've been really amazing people at finding the owners and sparing the dog or the cat anytime in the shelter. So that one's been a really rewarding one for us and our community.
Thanks, Denise. Monica, did you have a question? I see you unmuted. Otherwise, Kevin, we'd love to go over to you.
Sure. So I'm kind of building on, and you've already mentioned a few of, there is no formal document for the coalition itself, but you also mentioned that fear could stop people from working with each other. So my question would be, from around the country, especially probably more for, Jennifer Walter and being at a municipality, was there a big roadblock to implementing some of the partnerships that you're doing or having some of those contractual write-ups for working with each other, or was that pretty easy to overcome, or were there some certain barriers that you ran into there?
So we're very, very fortunate that we have an administration that is very supportive of animal welfare. So our contracts at this point are renewed on an annual basis without question. They've seen the benefit of it. But as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the greatest success comes from showing the city agencies or the administration what the financial benefit is to the community. So we were just talking specifically about microchipping and transfers from our shelter to the Jacksonville Humane Society. When we're talking about microchipping, it costs us $5, less than $5 to purchase a microchip, or it costs us $520 to house an animal and find it a new home. It's a no-brainer when it comes to the administration that we would rather spend that $5 to microchip an animal than have to house that animal and find it a new home, especially if it already had a family that loved it. Same thing with our transfers. The Jacksonville Humane Society gets just a fraction through that transfer contract to what it costs for them to take care of each of those animals. So it's viewed by our administration as a beneficial program for the community and for the city from a budgetary standpoint, because they're providing far more medical care and rehoming budget dollars for each animal individually than what it's costing us to transfer them. So I think approaching it with a laid out plan and data and statistics is what we have found has been the most beneficial for making a difference with the administration and the city leaders.
I would add to that too, that they're kind of apples and oranges. Those contracts were for services that predated the coalition. And so those were already allotted, and there's a fund that uses some of the licensing fees, and they're great programs, and they're beneficial to the people that are involved. The coalition, with the goal of getting us to no kill or over 90%, was separate and apart from that. So those other contracts, both with First Coast No More Homeless Pets and JHS, were already in existence for years. The coalition, to bind together on all our messaging and our overall goal for the community, was a separate effort that came later. And that's the one for which we didn't feel we needed any paperwork. And in fact, we're concerned paperwork could be a barrier. That the things that we could do, kind of the ask forgiveness versus permission approach, is that if we're working together and we're doing good things and everybody benefits from it, then what do we need paper for? What do we need that for? But if we started putting it down on paper, then people start fussing about words, and they start fussing about dates and times and budgets and other things. We just wanted to save more lives. in our community and do a better job of engaging our community at saving more lives. And we didn't feel like we needed an official document to do that. So they said those are kind of two separate things. The contractual arrangements are not interdependent on the coalition work. They're separate things.
Thanks for your question, Kevin. I have a question. I love this partnership between animal welfare agencies, but I'd love to also hear, as we talk more about being community-based or people-based, are there new partnerships that you've established with social services, public health, or any other agencies to support pets and people?
Yeah, there's been a number of them by, I believe, all three agencies, but the one that's probably newest for us and I'm proudest of is what we call Kitten Crusaders. And that we're doing all kinds of community cat work thanks to First Coast No More Homeless Pets and the city and JHS. It's all hands on deck with community cats anymore. But the kittens, I mean, we can get homes for the kittens. It was finding enough people to provide care. So 3 years ago, I'm pretty sure it was with grant dollars from Maddie's, we did a survey to find out what prohibited people from taking those kittens home and taking care of them themselves. No foster program, nothing. Why won't you just do this? Because our foster gets full, our shelters get full. And hands down, the number one reason they gave was the cost of medical care, of veterinary care. And as we all know, that was part of our challenge. We've all got great vet teams, but we've got our limits too. And so when trying to figure out how do we expand our capacity to meet the community's desire to help, but provide this medical care. And so we reached out to the private practice veterinarians in the community and clinics and said, would you be willing, if John Q. Citizen takes this litter of kittens home, would you be willing to provide their boosters, their wellness check, and oh yeah, even their spay neuter, if you would. And the first year was the year before COVID. And we had 8, 10 doctors on board?
Yeah.
Between 8 and 10 private practices. And each one was different. Again, that's where we were flexible. Some would do all of that if we provided them trays of boosters. Okay, we can do that. Some would do it all and ask for nothing in return from us. Some would do everything but surgery because that really was more time consuming and more expensive for them. And so we created a list. So anytime somebody called us and said they found kittens, we could say, great, will you keep them? And where do you live? Here's a vet nearby who's agreed to provide the veterinary care for those kittens for you. And the one thing JHS promises any of the people who do that is we will take the kittens when they're of adoption age. If they don't adopt them themselves, when they're old enough and healthy enough with all their boosters to be in the shelter, we'll accept them in the shelter. So that worked so well year one. Year two was COVID. So we lost a couple of doctors in the mix because some of their practices weren't open. This is our third year, and we have more doctors than ever who've agreed. Jennifer Barker, First Coast No More Homeless Pets Clinic, has agreed also. And so we keep a master list of the vet practices and clinics who will participate, how many litters they're willing to do. And then again, when John Q. Citizen calls us, we assign them to a veterinarian and we let the vet know who's been assigned and how many, and we keep track. So it's been, again, we all struggle for medical teams, right? And those we do have are all maxed out and tapped out. But by bringing our community veterinary practices into the fold in a reasonable way, we let them decide what they could and were willing to do, then we've expanded our capacity, and the community is now very accustomed to taking kitties home themselves and having a vet to help them through that process. So
Denise, I'd love to hear from our other speakers, but just to add to that, the number one question we typically get in response to the concept of a program like that is who is managing the partnerships? Like, is there a staff member? Is it a group of people? How are you able to facilitate those relationships?
between the three organizations?
Just anything between you and the private vets. Is it a staff member that's responsible for doing all that work? Is it a collaborative of people?
Oh, no, that's essentially Lauren sitting right there, along with her 500 other duties. We're a very lean, mean machine, Bobby. We don't have a big staff, any of us. So we make miracles happen with a tiny amount of people all the time, but it's, like I said, by leveraging our community. Like I said, that's how we're able to do so much work with so few.
Jennifer, would you like to add anything to this?
And one of the things that we've recently done is we've leveraged within the city as far as our other city divisions and departments. So as our administration has become very supportive of animal welfare, it's opened the doors for us to utilize other divisions. So throughout COVID and still currently, we've been providing information to Housing and Community Services Division, and they're pumping out all of our pet retention information and resources information to any members of the community that they're communicating with that might have a pet. So we had a really easy way without engaging with the private sector, just within the city itself. We weren't utilizing all of the resources that we had available. So community and housing services have been a huge benefit to us, that they're pumping information out to members of the community that we may never interface with without them. So our information has become part of their information.
We also, Bobby, during the peak of COVID, met with the United Way and helped their phone team on their, is it 211? Whatever their 11 call-in is for helps, and gave them questionnaires to ask about pets, so that if they had people reaching out to United Way for help, whether it had to do with housing, medical care, whatever their needs were, that we were able to meet with them and add to their scripts to ask questions about pets in the home, so that we could then get them to the services that they needed for their pet family members too.
And I would just add, you know, as our organization continues to support all of these life-saving programs with our partners, of course, with Jacksonville Humane Society and Animal Care and Protective Services, but we also work with over a dozen other local shelters. So it's important for our organization to plan ahead on ways that we can increase our capacity year over year. Even though we're on track to do 22,000 spay and neuter surgeries, a lot of them cat or kitten surgeries, we know we need to do more. So an important aspect to our planning is just figuring out ways where we can expand our resources, of course, you know, through grant and donor dollars, but also through our staff. So we have about 17 veterinarians on staff right now, and I can tell you we could double that number. So that's a really important part of the process too, is to continue to be able to maintain these programs and expand on them.
Thank you all so much. And just like that, our hour has flown by. I'd love to just create a little space for closing thoughts from all of you for the group. Denise, you got closing thoughts for the rest of the group?
Just that it's not as hard as you think. Let go. I can't say that enough. Let go, let go, let go. Let go of needing to have a contract, let go of needing to have words you agree on. Find what you have in common and work from there. You're way more powerful together than you're ever going to be alone.
I love it. Anything from Jennifer or Jennifer?
Yeah, I guess my closing thought would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. So often in the municipal aspect, we're very afraid to say where we need help and what help exactly we need. But unless we have the ability to ask our community and our partners and other agencies in our community for help and give them an idea of exactly what we need, nobody knows what's going on behind our doors unless we let them know. So just being vocal and being able to admit whenever you're drowning and whenever you need help. And removing egos, that we are not too proud to beg. And I think that has been one of the things that has been a success for us, is that we're not afraid to ask for help, because the only way that Denise and Jennifer can help us is if we tell them what we actually need.
And just on the flip side of that too, Jen, you know, all of us as leaders on this call, we can help facilitate some of those connections for these rural shelters. And so, you'd be surprised just picking up the phone to say, you know, hey, shelter on this side of town, can you help the shelter right next to you? And just by us making that call, it really does make a difference. And then hopefully we can encourage them to continue the dialogue.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just a quick shout out. Next week, we're going to have Memphis Animal Services here talking about implementing community-based programs during COVID. Remember to follow this conversation at Maddie's Pet Farm, which Allison just dropped the link in the chat. And to close it out, I'm going to toss it over to Mary Smith.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Jacksonville is a real incubator for leadership and talent. And I think this morning that the team really demonstrated the amazing work that they are doing. So thank you, Kim at Bissell. Thank you, Jennifer and Jennifer. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Carolyn. And this week, what I am going to take away from this call is that we don't need a stinking piece of paper to be kind to each other. Remember that. Thank you.